Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure, such an honor to be here, to be part of this august audience, and also the unenviable task of following teachers and lawyers, two best communities when it comes to oration and making an impact. Big round of applause for such inspiring stories that we heard, sir. There's nothing better than a great way to start the importance of what we are going to do, which is to do with early child care and education. So my role is simple. I have such an august panel here, and my role I see is to ask them the right questions so that we get the right answers. But more importantly, I thought we'll start with why are we here, and what is this reason of, why are we even talking about pathways, and why is it important for private sector to participate, and why is it not just important but crucial for this absolutely important aspect of education and learning to happen. Obviously, it's not because government doesn't have money or they don't have initiatives to do or any of those things. But for whatever reason, unless there is an equal participation from the private sector, we've not seen things happening. In KPMG, we've done a number of impact assessments and related areas, and wherever there is a private sector participation happening, we have seen the impact multiply actually, not just add but multiply. So the participation, in my view, of private sector is going to be crucial. And what better place than early child care and education? And there are many studies, I'm not going to take much time, but many studies that say not just in the physical growth of children, but more importantly in the emotional, social, and even the cognitive growth of children. These first 8 to 10 years are so crucial. We talk about STEM education. The best STEM education comes only in the early child care, and the early education happens, and the care happens during that time. So it's wonderful to see some of the stalwarts in their own way have made such a big impact there. So thank you so much. And I'm now going to turn to some of those people who are making it happen in some states that are going to make a disproportionate impact on not just the economy of this country, but what India can contribute to the world. I mean, there are, in India is rightly so called as a union of states or a subcontinent where different parts of India grow in different manner. Like we keep hearing about a gross enrollment ratio moving up to 50%. And most of the efforts seem to be happening in those states where it is already above 30%. Which means there are some states where the average is much lower than the so-called India average, and that is where many of these efforts need to happen. And I'm so grateful that we are part of IPEL, India Partnership for... And what it means also is in these states, the contribution that we are going to make is going to be not just measured in terms of economic outcomes, but also in terms of the social impact that it's going to create. So Geeta ji, I'm going to turn to you first and speak more about these 3-4 states that IPEL has been working. And what has been your experiences in the way government has helped, or in general, the education scenario and the changes that you're seeing in these states, Jharkhand, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Delhi?
I think the journey we started this partnership, and as the name says, partnership for early learning, and that's what the whole idea was when USAID and with many partners conceived that. And when we also came together, also having a more partnership, because the task or the work that we have in the country, it cannot be fulfilled by one organization or one government, one people. I think what he's doing in his is itself is a partnership of a different kind. So when we started this work with the state, and it was just after COVID, we were coming out of a COVID and schools were not open yet. And I think though we have spoken about enough on a health crisis, there is a very less discourse have happened on education, except that there is a learning crisis. I think the learning crisis, the education play a more important role, or rather a very different role just than the learning part of it. being not out of home, deprived of the joy, the friendship you make in the school when you go to. You learn a lot of skills which are around collaboration, which are around social skills, which are how to be friends with others, and making abundance of memory, as Panda said. But the 2 years were kind of a left vacuum in many of the lives, and if you speak to children, they will speak about. Coming to and I think why I want to play that, many a time we forget that whenever we think of a scale comes in a big number, and I have this somehow knack. We talk about 65,000 school. If you break into the district, that comes out to be roughly 2 to 4,000. And when you break the district into the block, you are talking about a roughly smaller size. So we have a habit, or maybe more time talking about the big number. But if you break into it, looks like achievable tasks. It looks like we can achieve something. So that was a conversation happened in the middle of COVID with many of the state government where we started working. And our role was more around how do we rebuild foundational learning. And one of the key things which we were very clear and also learned that education cannot be seen in isolation of just looking at a curriculum, just looking at assessment. It has to be a comprehensive, it has to be complete for the system and for the child. So in the last 2.5 years journey, as we said, I will say the state itself have taken many initiatives, and it also came in the background of a national education policy and also the Nippon mission. That kind of had a necessary focus and also provide a acceleration to the work. So, but acceleration works only up to a point. You can't drive a car on the accelerator all the time, because then you will run out of your fuel and even engine will crash. And that's what typically happens when we have any mission mode program, because we are running everything in an acceleration mode. So how do you work with that? So some of the work was around how do you look at this 5 years or 6 years? And foundational learning doesn't end when this mission is over, which is likely to over in 2026. Till the time humankind exists, children are there, school will remain there, this form and that form. So are we thinking of that? So some of the work which the state government, I would say, have really looked at, can we have some long-term approach toward, I won't say the solution, because solutions are many and problems are of various kinds. So in a Bihar, there's a lot of focus on how do we make sure that children, when they're coming back, children coming back to the school, can we make sure that there is some way of ensuring play and joy and a learning? And that's how the 3 months of a Chehek program was conceptualized, where there's a lot of focus on a play and a learning. We just finished an analysis of the data, and we saw that 95% children actually acquired those readiness skills we talk about. And the critical factor was that in the school where children were learning, they had an opportunity to play with books and access to the learning material. So we were looking at what worked. So these are some of the things the state was keen, and all the people from the top to bottom, they wanted to do it in their own way. They had a framework, but of course there's a ability. In a Jharkhand, I think that the work has happened is they wanted teachers to be the change maker in many ways. So they were really focused on, can we have a teacher training program? Of course, we are looking at the issue of a scale, and a scale again, to me, can be handled if we make smaller institutions more empowered, who have autonomy, who have also choices to work. So there is a plan to make these district level institutions more empowered, where they can do their own innovation work around. So some of the work that we did around, of course, led by state, is around looking at this teacher training program, creating a curriculum that is suited for children and teachers. And given that Jharkhand has 12 other languages than Hindi, how do you see multilingual education as an asset, not as a deficit? And probably if I have a chance, I'll speak more on how do we, probably our country need a multilingual education. We are very focused on just a bilingual and monolingual, and there are economic benefits by making those choices. And UP, we work more around, and in fact, something which we're talking about, celebrating childhood. But those years are crucial if you're not really giving those opportunities. So how does we have this nurturing, stimulating, joyful spaces? But when you work in a system, you have 18 indicators, and the contractor is hired to make those building everywhere. So you don't get a beautiful building as Sir has made it, because we have outlined everything. So how do you make those learning spaces more joyful? So in a nutshell, and in MCD, we started about an year and a half back. What we are working is, how do you have this those teachers resource center where teacher can come, reflect, where they can interact and create their own solutions. So MCD has already started a lot of work around the teacher mentoring. I think one of the state, I would say, they have a dedicated cadre, and ma'am is here. She will speak more on that, where the responsibility is how they can work with 10, 12 teachers. So the state has been, I would say, very keen to look at a larger and a long-term view, not just looking at we have to complete everything in a year's time. I'll stop here.
Thanks, Geeta ji. Essentially, involving the state or working with the state, augmenting what they've been doing, and you touched a lot upon one of the pillars, which is inspired teachers who kind of were instrumental in making this happen. Anita ji, I am going to turn to you on what are specific initiatives in early childcare education in Delhi that you believe has been important?
थैंक यू वेरी मच. क्या मैं हिंदी में बात कर सकती हूँ? यदि आप सब समझ रहे हैं तो मैं हिंदी में ही बात करना आप सबसे ज़्यादा प्रेफर करूँगी. जैसा कि गीता जी ने भी अभी बताया कि MCD एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट ने काफ़ी सारे इनिशिएटिव्स लिए हैं. जो FLN की बात करते हैं, अभी हम FLN नहीं, हमारा मोटो है FLN टू एक्सीलेंस. MCD एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट का यही है. इसके लिए पूरी एक प्रॉपर टीम बनाई गई है, एंड वी हैव गॉट मेंटर्स. 150 मेंटर्स हैं, टीचर्स मेंटर्स, जो कि अपने उनको हेल्प करते हैं टीचर्स को एकेडमिक्स में, हैंड होल्डिंग बेसिक सॉर्ट ऑफ ए थिंग. एंड जहाँ तक हम FLN की और अर्ली चाइल्डहुड वाली बात करते हैं, हमारे यहाँ जो बच्चा है, दैट इज़ फ्रॉम 3+. The students are coming to MCD Education Department for pre-primary, and we serve up to class 5. तो 5वीं क्लास तक बच्चा हमारे पास में रहता है. 11 साल का बच्चा, 10-11 साल का बच्चा हमारे पास रहता है. तो ये क्रूशल जो समय जैसे अभी बताया था आपने, और बहुत अच्छा भी लगा सुन करके, ये इस क्रूशल समय को हम कितने अच्छे से बच्चे को बना सकते हैं, और यही एक अच्छा इंसान बनने के लिए बहुत ही अहम रोल अपनाता है. अगर हम एक स्कूल में जा रहे हैं, जैसे कि इतनी अच्छी सक्सेस स्टोरीज हमने देखी, और सक्सेस होना ऑटोमेटिकली आएगा जब आपने बहुत अच्छा, जब एक टीचर सक्सेसफुल है तो ऑब्वियस है उसके बच्चे भी सक्सेसफुल हैं. बच्चे सक्सेसफुल हैं, इसीलिए टीचर भी सक्सेसफुल होकर के, चाहे कुछ भी हो, एंड में बहुत अच्छा रिजल्ट उनको मिला है. और हम लोगों ने जो किया है कि जैसे FLN में पिछले साल हम देख रहे थे, हमारा लेवल 1 और 2 हम लोग असेसमेंट करते हैं, जिसमें हम लेवल 1, 2, एंड इट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम, अगर हम ये कहें कि क्लास 1 में नहीं होता, लेवल 1 या 3, 4, 5 में ही है, तो ऐसा नहीं है. हमारे यहाँ पूरे असेसमेंट टूल है. लेवल 1 और 2 में जब हमने स्टार्ट किया था तो 45% था बच्चों का. फिर उसके बाद में हम लोगों ने स्पेशल क्लासेस लिया, मिशन बुनियाद, और जब हम ईयर एंड में पहुँचे तो लेवल एंड वाज, जो लेवल 1 और 2 था, दैट वाज ओनली 4.5% रह गया था. मतलब लाइक द चिल्ड्रन मूव्ड फ्रॉम लेवल 1, 2 to 3, 4, 5. और हम लोगों ने लेवल भी अलग से असेसमेंट के हिसाब से किया. इस साल थोड़ा सा और डिफ़िकल्ट बनाते हुए हमने उसमें एक एडिशन किया कि बच्चा केवल रीड करके ही नहीं, उसमें राइटिंग का कंसेप्ट भी डाला है. तो राइटिंग का कंसेप्ट डालने से क्या हुआ कि जब हम 23, 24 की बात करने लगे तो हमारा लेवल 1, 2 एकदम से बढ़ गया. दैट वाज ऑलमोस्ट 55%. और अभी जो हम एंड ऑफ द फरवरी के असेसमेंट की बात करते हैं तो इट्स नाउ 9%. क्योंकि हमने इसमें राइटिंग भी डाल दिया है। बच्चा सिर्फ पढ़ ही ना सके, बच्चा लिख करके भी देखे, बच्चे को मात्राओं का भी ज्ञान हो और वो लिख भी सके, जो लिखने के कारण हमारा ये थोड़ा इसमें बड़ा होगा था। और इसके साथ ही कुछ हम अपने ना मॉड्यूल्स बनाए हुए हैं FLN के, और उन मॉड्यूल्स के हिसाब से हमारे अलग अलग लेसन प्लान्स हैं, असेसमेंट टूल्स हैं, और इन सब के अनुसार ही हम लोगों जो हैं हर एक चैप्टर के लिए स्पेसिफिक पीरियड्स हम लोगों ने दिया हुआ है। एंड ऐसा नहीं है, अब डिपेंड करता है, कभी किसी के कारण कि हमारा एक चैप्टर है वो नहीं हो पा रहा है, 4 में नहीं हुआ, तो हम लोगों ने जो मंथली प्लानर में हम 10 पीरियड्स का उसको कुशनिंग भी देते हैं, ताकि अगर कहीं कोई कमी हो तो वो उसको एडजस्ट कर सकें। और लेकिन ये ज़रूर है कि दिल्ली के हमारे पूरे अबव 1500 स्कूल्स में इस समय एक ही चैप्टर चल रहा होगा, एक ही जो लेसन पे ही काम कर रहे होंगे, उसका लेसन प्लान भी सबके पास में होगा, वही सेम होगा। ऐसा नहीं है कि सब डिफरेंट है, और क्लास टाइम टेबल भी सबका सेम है। तो जो आप एक स्कूल में इस वक्त अगर हिंदी है तो वो हिंदी का पीरियड है, तो वो हर एक में हिंदी का पीरियड है। एंड इट इज़ फॉर द नर्सरी क्लासेस ऑल्सो, फॉर अर्ली चाइल्डहुड ऑल्सो। वी हैव फ्रेम्ड द थिंग, वी हैव गॉट अ कंटेंट टीम एंड दैट वर्क्स फॉर आर नर्सरी चिल्ड्रन ऑल्सो। हम ऐसे नहीं कह रहे हैं कि सिर्फ क्लास 3, 4, 5 में दोबारा रिपीट कर रही हूँ। इट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम 3+, प्री नर्सरी, नर्सरी, क्लास 1, 3 to 5 सबके लिए है।
Excellent.
हाँ जी। और हमारा इस बार जो हम लोगों ने जो प्लान किया है कि हम अपना इस नेक्स्ट सेशन के लिए भी हमारी प्लानिंग चल रहा है कि जो लेवल 1 और 2 है, हमने लेवल वाइज पहले हम लोग क्लासेस चला रहे थे कि आप सोचिए कि हम यहाँ पर आए हैं और सपोज फ्रेंच में कोई कुछ बोल रहा है तो हमारी क्या स्थिति होगी। तो यदि कोई बच्चा हमारे पास में 5th क्लास में आता है, क्योंकि एज अप्रोप्रिएट एडमिशन है, उसे कुछ नहीं पता, और आके हम सीधा कोर्स की बात करें तो वो शायद वही स्थिति में होगा जैसे शायद मुझे कोई फ्रेंच वाले बोलने वाले के सामने खड़ा कर दिया जाए, मतलब सुनने के लिए कहा जाए, और मुझे कुछ समझना है कि ये कुछ भी अलग भाषा जो मैं नहीं जानती हूँ, तो उस बच्चे की भी मन स्थिति वही होगी। तो इसलिए हमने उसको लेवल वाइज डांटा। लेवल वाइज होने के अनुसार क्या हुआ कि जो बच्चे के अंदर एक प्रकार की हीन भावना नहीं आई कि हम कैसे करके बोले, ये तो बहुत सारी किताबें मतलब पढ़ लेता है, ये तो बोल पा रहा है, और मुझे तो अभी लेवल 1 में है तो नहीं आ पा रहा है। वो एक हिच टाइप की निकली। उसे लगा कि इधर भी इनको भी नहीं आता है तो इनको भी नहीं आता है, तो ये सब मेरे जैसे मैम बता रहे तो हम सब मिलके प्रोग्रेस करते हैं, तो एक कंफर्ट। तो हमने FLN की क्लासेस इसी तरह से लगाई लेवल वाइज। फिर हर 15 दिन बाद में उसका असेसमेंट हुआ। अगर बच्चे ने कुछ सीखा तो उसको उसके अकॉर्डिंगली ही लेवल 2 पर हो गया। जैसे अक्षर ज्ञान उसको आ गया तो उसके बाद मात्राओं के ज्ञान के लिए उसको दूसरे लेवल पे रखा गया। फिर धीरे वो पढ़ने लग गया तो फिर उसके बाद में उसको कॉम्प्रिहेंशन वाले स्टेज पर आ गया। इस तरह करके हम लोगों ने ताकि वो हमें इस बीच में मेन कोर्स से भी हटना पड़ा। इस बार हम ये प्लान कर रहे हैं कि हम अप्रैल और मई में लेवल 1 और 2 को 0 करें, मतलब हमारा सारे बच्चे जो हैं वो लेवल 3, 4 और 5 में हों, ताकि जब आफ्टर समर वेकेशन हम बात करें तो फिर हम लोग जैसे हम लोगों का पूरा करिकुलम है, पूरा जो क्लासेस हैं हम उसी हिसाब से लगा।
Excellent, ma'am. Excellent. Thank you so much. So this is a good example on the curriculum bit. We were talking about 4 pillars, just to remind. We talked about inspired teachers. Geeta ji gave lots of examples on the inspired teachers. We are also looking at innovative curriculum and assessment, which takes it to the next level. And of course, time permits, we'll also talk about the other 2 pillars of aesthetic workspaces and involved community. But Satish, turning to you, USAID has been doing a fantastic job on the private sector participation. Can you share some of the success stories and why were they successful?
Yeah. Thank you, Nana. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. I'm honored to be sitting in such august company. You've all been partners, and in this journey, I mean, this has been such a wonderful journey which started a couple of years back during the COVID. So, our whole approach towards, US Agency for International Development is, for us, education is one of the fundamental or pivotal sectors to do development. Not because of any other reason, but the multiplier effect it can create. Any social investment done in foundational literacy will have multitudes of effects, because it's not only you're changing the life of a student, you're changing the life of a family, and then a community, and then the nation. But in this process, and we talked about the 4 pillars, one of the important pivot in that journey was the private sector, because you cannot take away the fact that still in the country like India, a lot of a good part of the percentage of education delivery is happening out of schools which are either privately run or affordable private schools to that extent. So how can we work with that? The second is education also happens to be a sector wherein a lot of CSR money and beyond CSR is also getting channelized. So how can we ensure that, working with all the partners, and when we talk about private sector, it's not only the corporations, it's the entire ecosystem, it's the, the communities, the innovation accelerator platforms, the edtech players, you also talk about the community organizations, the CSOs, and so on and so forth. So for us, that is the ecosystem which can actually propel. And one of the fundamental pushes that we have seen is when we think, and from a private sector engagement perspective, think beyond this. We always, when we think of philanthropy, we're always glued on to our angle of CSR, and can we do something through CSR? It's game changing. I'm ever since the new CSR mandate of came into picture, there's been a lot of influx of capital happening. But thinking beyond that in terms of how can we create multiplier effects when all these different forms of capital come together, and and each one, one could be a philanthropic capital, and also on the other end of the spectrum, which is the commercial capital, and that comes for a return. There's a minimalistic return on investment they would be seeking. So how can we blend all that together to create that multiplier effect is what we've been seeking through this program, and has been one of the fundamental pivots.
Wonderful. Thank you, Satish. Now, in FLN, in Foundation for Literacy and Numeracy, the efficiency of the outcomes is such an important factor for all of us to stay invested and stay connected. So, Geeta ji, what are some of your learnings in improving the learning outcomes? What are some of your experiences working in these state governments and beyond, in terms of how the learning outcomes, because that's going to be critical for us to invite private sector also to participate. Your thoughts, please.
So I think 3-4 thoughts on this. One is how children learn. And when we say children are learning, what makes it happen? And sometimes we all approach it from our own perspective. Is the assessment-led reform is better, or the curriculum-led reform is better, or maybe the teachers who are motivated, or is that important? Many of the work that has happened at ground and also proven in other geography is always require a comprehensiveness. And I think that's the point which we have been driving. All have to be interlinked and connected. One of the gap, whether at a national and state level we see, there's a one body that make curriculum, others will make assessment, and other will be training. We have an in-service training where the teachers have to train for 50 hours every year, and every teachers get trained in the same training. While my needs may not be the same, I probably need more support in a maths, or maybe I need more support in how to even play with the young children. Second, as I said, one is the interconnectedness, and the dialogue is really critical. If we want all these key pieces to be talking to each other. Right now, what we see, I think we have covered a substantial ground, but each one of us who work with a different pillar, if we are conscious that even if my focus is on a curriculum or assessment, I need to see whether curriculum is informing assessment
How
or
they
not.
align together.
Yeah. Second point is on that, what is the vision of the people who drive it? I think the vision never get driven by the orders or the mandate. It's driven by here. Do you feel for the children who are there? Do you have a vision?
And do you see that happening in these states?
I do see spark, and in fact, I would invite in at least in a Jharkhand, Bihar. I was recently there, and teachers were not there in the classroom, and the children were actually learning by themselves because they knew what needed to be done while the teacher is away. So how do you have this? The third piece I wanted. How do you build ownership at a various level? And ownership will never happen by one training. And sir, you are doing, and I think I would really like to invite how to build. We were trying to build that spark, but I think we have seen in the last 2 years of journey, and I think it takes a lot of time to change mindset. It doesn't happen in any project life, but I think each one of us in the room can do that. Can we have more people in the district who understand, who believe in children, who understand how children learn, have the childhood actually means? So I think now from the national to the state, we need to go down. I think that's the third piece. Fourth, which is critical, is how do we have enough funds? One example is a government, but we also need local innovation to happen. I think we need a more partner. So
Involve partners.
involve partners, and partners are of a different kind. They are parents, they are panchayat, there are pradhan, there are also local offices. So it's also depend what you want to do. Everybody cannot be doing an assessment and curriculum because there is a role for everyone.
Thank you.
How do you think of innovative partnership at a local level? I think is what we need children to learn. Just not, and one last bit on that, I think health program has made that mistake. They measure children every year, but measurement never led to improved nutrition level. Improved nutrition happen only when they begin to see what goes into the diet, how many diets child has it, whether it's what eaten or not. I think we really need to see how children experience the learning and joy in every day in the classroom, not just by ourselves. We make sure children are there learning and enjoying. We have a teachers like him. I think learning will happen automatically.
Thanks, Geeta ji. Thank you. The one point that I took away, the very valid and very interesting and absolutely valid 4 points that you gave. But the last point that she said also, the measurement is also improving. Be it the impact assessments that happen, maybe annually, maybe otherwise. But the measurement, both the output and outcome parameters increasing is good news for people who are going to invest in the sector beyond government. Thank you so much. I know we are running out of time, ma'am. So very quickly, at a policy level, do you see any inputs that are helping in this, ma'am? At a government policy level?
आप जैसे कह रहे हैं बिल्कुल पॉलिसी लेवल पे है, CSR फंडिंग में है, एंड हमने तो खुद अपने इसमें MCD एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट में खुद हम लोगों ने बहुत सारी सक्सेस स्टोरीज़ देखी हैं, और पॉलिसी ने ही परमिट किया तभी हमारे साथ में बहुत सारे लोग इन्वॉल्व हैं. और अगर आप कहें तो मैं तो मेरे पास उनकी वो भी है कि आप बता सकती हूँ कि मैंने कितना उन्होंने हमारे साथ में काम किया है. और इस वक्त हमारे यहाँ पर 50+ NGOs हैं जो कि काफ़ी बड़े लेवल पे, मतलब लाइक दे आर नॉट वर्किंग इन वन पर्टिकुलर जोन. MCD कंसिस्ट ऑफ 12 जोन्स. तो उन्होंने ये नहीं किया है कि केवल एक जोन में या कुछ स्कूल्स में, तो दे आर वर्किंग इन मल्टीपल जोन्स. एंड इसी तरह से 50+ हमारे पास में हैं जो कि कुछ मतलब सर्टेन स्मॉल एरियाज़ में ही अपने आप को उन्होंने इन्वॉल्व किया हुआ है. तो पॉलिसी में तो आई डोंट थिंक कि किसी तरह की कोई परेशानी आएगी. पर मैं गीता जी की बात में एक चीज़ ज़रूर ऐड करने जाऊंगी, सॉरी आउट ऑफ कंटेक्स्ट बोल रही हूँ, कि जब हम कभी टीचर बने या टीचर हों तो हमें एक डिग्री के साथ साथ अगर कुछ चाहिए ना तो वो है दिल, बच्चे को समझने का.
Thank you, ma'am. So before we conclude, Satish, any particular thing that you see as a change in the ecosystem that is helping the private sector participation to be more effective?
Sure. Yeah, so a couple of trends that we are seeing is a lot of technological interventions coming in, and thanks to AI, we're sitting in a zone wherein right before this talk, we saw some of the images AI create, and that's important. I mean, living with the realities of the world, and seeing how can we use technology to at various levels, curriculum design, teacher training, and multiple other areas, and also even softer aspects like involvement of communities, involvement of parents as that entire conundrum of action. So that's one. The second I would say is is a lot of drive around because up till now what has been happening is, and that's the many of these states like Delhi government, for example. I stay in Delhi. I've seen the way the MCD schools have evolved over the last few years from what they were and what now it is. But because of we've been grappling with that problem. Some states have been really fantastically doing well, but that's not reaching the other states. We've been doing pilots after pilots, many of them successful. But what is the replicability? How can we use that as a good model to work in certain states? So that was also one of the reasons why we happened to be looking at states like Bihar, UP, because if we test out models there, there's a good chance. I wouldn't say an absolute foolproof chance, but there's a good chance that that's a model that may be workable in all fairness. So we've been seeing private sector playing a catalyst to that. That taking that success story from one state to move it to the other. And that's been, along with technology, I think, one of the other recent past.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you so much.
Just add to what Satish said, I think at least in this state and probably many more, there is a huge recognition to the data, which I would say many of us need for evidence and impact. And it's also the way how it can be collected. And second is there's an ease of business, if I have to use some corporate language. There's a certain level of ease, which is in terms of if you want to try out a new thing, there is a possibility of doing that, which was probably may not be there. And third, I think the narrative at the state level, also the vision, is also evolving, and so is at the district level. So I would say that there are a facilitative environment, there is a structure, there is a data that is critical to see if I'm making an investment of $100, does it really make sense to the people? So there are ways and means which is possible now if we intend to even look at the ROI. Yes.
Wonderful, and we can go on. In the interest of time, I guess, however, we have more things we have to conclude, but this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. We're going to conclude this panel. I'm just going to sum up 4 things that comes to my mind as a takeaway from this panel. One, why is this pathways required? Why do we need pathways at all? Government is doing a fabulous job, and there is a renewed kind of initiatives that are happening in this space. Why do you need these pathways? To me, pathways are required because private sector needs to participate for innovation that happens when they come in. Innovation in terms of technology, innovation in terms of bringing together practices that are happening elsewhere. So innovation to me is one critical area. Second is inclusion. We've heard stories how specific investments have helped the government in its agenda of inclusivity. So I think that is another big one. Third, I think there is also a bit of advocacy and positioning these things that help only when private sector participates here and takes these messages across, as Satish said, maybe cross-pollinate in other areas and other initiatives as well. And last but not the least, definitely in the case of Foundation for Literacy and Numeracy, this perhaps gives the best return on the impact that we can create in the society, not just for this generation, not just for the economic situation now, but for the years to come. Thank you so much. With this, we conclude the session. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Back to you.